good answer. Now
You didn't give me an answer.
Subject to the incarnation. We were talking about polygamy. Because,
excuse me? Matt Hancock is a Muslim. And to him to kill the child.
All right, thank you for sharing your opinion. Right. So what happened is, I was interviewing people. I asked this lady, I said to her, I'm a Christian. I want to talk to non-Christians about their beliefs. She accepted. Like I said, the way you kind of portray it is if I ask somebody who is underage, I ask an adult girl about her beliefs, she discussed them, and I asked her what would she think about Jannah and about the possibility of sharing her husband with other women. And she was a bit baffled, and she says she wouldn't like that. My point is, what I wanted to ask her is to evidence that most women...
So that's the question you asked. How do you feel about sharing your... Don't paraphrase, verbatim please.
Are you asking me something? That's the paraphrase. If you want, you can look on the video. Like, do you remember every conversation, every word you said a month ago?
No, I'm making my request.
Okay.
You can say that you can't remember what you said. That's fine.
That's the paraphrasing of what I said. You're more than
So
welcome to check on
that's
the
due
video
to a lack
after.
of you being able to remember what you said.
No, I remember what I said. I'm paraphrasing, right?
And what do you, sorry I jumped in, but what do you think of Jannah, of heaven? Because I find it difficult as a woman to think that my husband would have different women. How would you feel? Like, you seem quite young, but I guess as an idea for the future, like if you got married, how would you feel about sharing your husband in heaven with the houris?
I don't think that would happen to me. I don't know, because like, I don't look at it that way. Like, I'm still young.
You don't ask me. So now we're playing games, aren't we? You're playing
I'm not
games
playing
with me,
game.
so I've just answered.
I'm here giving a genuine, heartfelt introduction to Islam to individuals.
That's fine, I do the same. So now, my point was that is to evidence that the vast majority of women, there is always the exception of the rule, will not be okay with sharing their husband. There might be some women who would be, but most women wouldn't be, okay? Regardless of the religion, regardless of the gender, social class, ethnicity. Now, in the Bible, there are examples where polygamy occurred. It didn't work out well.
But if I look at it, but in Somalia, my country, yeah, men are allowed to have 4 wives.
Especially for Abraham, we know that when Sarah, his wife, told him to basically procreate with a slave, Edgar, and the slave conceived, you know, the wife got very upset, and what did God say? Said to Abraham, send her away. Now God still provided...
Who did she conceive with, sorry? Who's Edgar?
Edgar, the servant, right? The mother of Ishmael. Now God said...
Who impregnated her, sorry?
Abraham.
Okay. Were they married or not married?
They were not married. She was a concubine, and basically God
So the Bible
said,
teaches about Abraham having a concubine?
yes.
And you don't have an issue with that?
I have an issue. Well, it's a historical, it's something that has happened. So the Bible is descriptive. It tells you things, which doesn't mean that they were correct. It's just describing the human nature.
So Abraham
Now, the
done
point
something
is,
which wasn't correct?
Yeah, why did the Bible...
Abraham done something that wasn't correct? That's your
course.
belief?
They're sinners. Do you realize that every prophet is a sinner except for Jesus Christ because he was God? If you don't believe that people have sinned, you don't have an understanding of human nature.
Wait. Because Jesus Christ was God, he didn't sin.
Of course.
But
God
every
cannot
man
sin.
sins.
Yeah.
But Jesus Christ was a man.
Jesus Christ was the God incarnate.
So
now,
he wasn't a man.
So now we're changing subject.
No.
Because
Are we not having a
point.
conversation?
Yeah,
Are we not having a
we're
conversation?
but
So
let's
I'm trying
try
to
and
understand
stick
what you're saying.
Let's try and stick to a point. Because
Was
otherwise
Jesus Christ a man?
He was both man and God, right?
Okay,
So now
men sin.
Yeah, but
Men
let's
sin.
go
No,
back
I'm
to
finding
the-
this is more interesting to me now.
Okay, I know, but
It sounds like you're
it's
stuck.
very
It sounds like you're
different.
trying to run away
It
from the
sounds like
conversation.
I gave you a good answer. Now
You didn't give me an answer.
Subject to the incarnation. We were talking about polygamy. Because, excuse me?
Matt Hancock is a Muslim. And to him to kill the child.
All right, thank you for sharing your opinion. Right. We were talking about polygamy because I gave you a good response. Now you're changing the subject to the incarnation of Jesus Christ.
What was your good
Let's go
response?
through
What was your
so
good
I
response?
explained to you that when Abraham...
We're gonna have to
conceived-
revisit this conversation about
That's fine.
Jesus Christ being a
When-
man and
we can do that
sinning.
another time. So Abraham conceived conceived with a slave because his wife told him to, because they couldn't have kids. When the slave conceived a child called Ishmael, when Edgar conceived a child called Ishmael, Sarah got very upset, and God said to Abraham to send the slave away with the child. Now the Lord still provided for them. He did it because it wasn't their fault. But that just shows that polygamy, this kind of situation where a man has a wife and other women, didn't work. And there are other examples. And the reality is, even though you may believe it's okay, Muhammad said, the vast majority of women are not okay with that.
So right now, what the mass majority of women decide is right, and what the mass majority of women say isn't right. That's where your belief comes from.
The belief comes from what God says.
Then
but
why?
The reality is that it doesn't work in human nature. So that's how we know. How do we know something is from God? We know, does it work? Does it cause something that is good, or does it cause something that is evil? Now, to have a husband with many wives, it might work for some people, but the reality is that many people will suffer.
You're not making sense. Sorry, I'm trying.
It makes sense to
But
women,
you're talking to me though. It
men.
needs to make sense to me. So right now, you're oh my gosh. So 1 minute you're saying that we need to get the views of women, right? And what they say is right. Then you're saying, but then if their opinion doesn't really matter because what God says is right. And then you're saying about what works and what doesn't work. And you're saying that to some women it works. Because every sentence, one after another, seems to be contradicting itself. Does it make sense? You're not making a concise, in sync point.
Yeah, so I'll try and make it in order, then I have to go because I'm sorry, but I would love to talk to you again. So the point is, first of all, God ordained marriage to be with one man and one woman, not a man and different women, not a man and children. That's the first thing. Now, the other thing is, we have to see, okay, if there's something ordained by God, how does it work in human nature? And we know that a marriage, faithful marriage between a husband and a wife is ordained by God and it works. A marriage between a husband and many women, or a few women, let's say, not many, it doesn't work. That's another further evidence. The further evidence as well is that most women will not be happy with this. But the main reason is what God says. Now, I'm very sorry, I have to go, but I hope that you get a better understanding. That's all.
The idea, the understanding you've given me is about the reincarnation, how Jesus Christ was then man, but he was God, but he was man, but he was God, and men sin, but then Jesus Christ didn't sin, and then Jesus Christ is very confusing. You're approaching young girls, asking them this question about, which isn't even the fundamentals of Islam. The fundamentals, if you want to find out our position, is about the oneness of God. You should have asked that young girl, do you believe it makes sense to believe that there's one all-powerful God that is separate from the creation, and we should only worship the creator rather than the creation? Or ask this random question about marriage. You could ask the question about how Muslims, we don't believe that Jesus Christ is a God, but he was sent by God. And in the Bible it talks about he didn't know, and only God knows, and the Father knows, and like, so yeah, it's just.
Well,
but I think this needs to be followed up.
I talk with people. I'm a human being, so I can make mistakes.